Hey YouTube, Facebook, whatnot, this is Blade Junkie. I just wanted to show you guys my latest Lego creation. You can see it sitting there on the, on the bed. So, yeah, it's over there. Anyway, if I move out of the way, you'll see it. And it's a crawler. This is the controller for it. Very basic. No special stuff. No wheel, nothing. Forward, backward, right, left, all that good stuff. I think first thing I'll show you is the fact that it's not pendular suspension this time. One thing you'll know about me, or recognize about me, if you've ever seen my videos before, is that I build pendular suspension. And I like it because it's robust. But in this instance, I've gone with something a little more mobile. So, looking at it here, you can tell that it's got these flexible little things here. I know some people use them as leaf springs, so just to make sure you really can see what it is, these little things. Lots of flex. And the upside to it is you get a lot more flex than you need, really, but anyway, the way it's made, it uses Unimog tires, it uses portal system, it uses a lot of gear reduction, so it is very, very slow. Very advantageous to me, but it does have very quick steering. This is the steering here, and it also turns quite tight, and I can show you that. That's a pretty darn good steering angle for something like that, I think. Great amount of movement. I've got a rack at the back, so rack and pinion is open for rear steering as well. Haven't installed it, don't know if I will. If I do add a body, I'm going to have to put more of these little flexible parts in. But, like I was saying, pendular suspension is really my thing. This is not pendular. This actually has suspension in it in such a way that you can press on it like that and it will go. So that's pretty sweet. And it applies the same to the rear portion of the vehicle. You can actually do this. It's got enough flex to do that. But it's also got enough flex to do this. There's kind of a view of how it works. Not really how it works, but it does work. I assure you that much. At the bottom here, see the gear reductions from the dual XL drive through a drive shaft into the main gear down, which is quite significant, and then it gears down yet again one more time. And you probably can't quite see it, but it gears it down in such a way that it moves the axle forward a little bit, and then it goes into the steering axle, and then it goes into a portal, and then to the wheel. So that's that. Pretty sweet. 8878 battery pack. All of these parts are parts that were common before the release of the 9398 Rock Crawler, released by Lego this year. It's 2012. But anyway, suspension! Probably didn't see me do that, but whoa! That's quite a decent amount of flex, I'd say, for a Lego thing. So yeah, pretty sweet. This is based partly on a concept that I found online. I wish I could tell you whose concept it was, but I really can't. Anyway, you can see that single receiver. Pretty simple and swift system. Unimog tires, all that good stuff. And this here is my futon. Move some stuff to give you a little bit of a better perspective on how this thing really does function, because it does quite nicely. Alright, forward, steering, yeah, so like I said, it's a crawler, so it's not quick, it's incredibly slow. And any of you that are into radio controlled stuff, you'll know that anything that's designed for off-road is going to go a lot slower than anything designed for on-road. And anything that's designed for more hardcore off-roading will obviously be a lot slower still. So I've taken that concept here and I've slowed this down. My older vehicle, the Epic 6x6, which was made into the Epic 8x8, was quite heavy, and it was a little quicker than this, but it had dual XL drive as well, but it was 1XL per axle at one point in time when it was the Epic 4x4, and from then on it went to 1XL driving 2 axles, and then 1XL driving 1 axle, and then when it became the 8x8, it was 1XL to each set of, or pair of axles, but that never had a chassis. Well, it was a chassis, it never had a body, rather. So it was a bit quicker than this, though, because it wasn't designed to go off-road, it was designed to look cool. It had enough flex in the suspension, which was not really flex, it was pendular suspension on all axles except for the front axle. When it became the 8x8, the first axle had lots of suspension movement, but it was not spring active. So that was a little interesting to try for me. There we go. So you can see it's got a high center of gravity here, so it does flip over quite easily, but it still does quite nicely for something built in just a few hours of boredom. I'm sure it could be built a lot faster if I had instructions for it, but I do not, and I do not plan to make instructions for it. So I apologize for those of you that want to build something like this. I'm sure you could figure it out. It's quite simple, but the way I see it, if you build your own stuff, you'll get a lot more satisfaction than building other people's stuff. But anyway, like I was saying, the Epic 6x6, it was faster than this, but in the end it was geared down a little differently, so it was probably about the same speed, which was quite slow. But the reason that it was different was because it was so heavy. It probably had the ability to go a lot faster, but the reason it didn't go faster was because of the fact that it was so heavy. So it probably had a pretty decent gear ratio, so it could go pretty quick, but the weight really slowed it down because it put stress on the motors, so that sucked. So anyway, I disassembled that and I made another Epic 4x4 iteration. It wasn't ever actually a finished iteration of it, but that was also when you saw the Fast 4x4, which became the Hot Rod, which I still have parts of. You can see here, this is my little building zone, and see, I've still got the rear bumper assembled right here, and I've still got the hood assembled right here, and the front bumper portion, and a few other things of it are still assembled, but for the most part I took it apart so that I'd be able to build something a little more special. So I decided to go with the crawler this time, just to try something new, which I think was quite successful. And yeah, so anyway, this is just another one of my all-wheel drive vehicles. If you check my channel, you'll find that I have a few different vehicle sorts. One of them is tanks. I go with a lot of tanks. I like them. The tread concept is really cool. Claw vehicles. I like vehicles with claws. They're often mounted on top of tread vehicles. So the treaded vehicles often hold a lot more weight amongst them than anything with wheels. And they're a lot easier to build. You'll find my first 4x4 I ever built. It was fairly weak. It was made with universal joints and it wasn't geared down at all, really. So that was a terrible, terrible experience for me because it busted up a few parts. And after that, I went to the more efficient 4x4. That I believe is even the title of the video. So you might want to check that out. It's an interesting concept, but it's nothing near as agile as this. It is a lot faster, I think. After that, I did go to make, I believe, the Epic 4x4 chassis, and in that video I also showed you the Mini 4x4 chassis. So those were my other all-wheel drive vehicles that kind of led up to my development of this. So after that, the Epic 4x4 chassis and the small 4x4 chassis, the mini chassis, which I kind of adopted the idea of the mini chassis in the Epic 4x4, which, as I said, came to be it went from the Epic 4x4 chassis to the Epic 4x4 truck with trailer. The trailer was driven as well. If you want to check that video out, you'll find that in my channel. And after that, it became the Epic 6x6, at which point I had many attachments for it. It had 3 axles. And then I disassembled it, and I made about 2 or 3 videos assessing the chassis of it, showing you kind of how it worked. So the chassis review of that is also on my channel for the Epic 6x6. From there, I went to the Epic 8x8 chassis, which went nowhere. I didn't build a body for that. I just did it as an experiment. After that was disassembled, I made the Fast 4x4, and I modified the body of the Epic 4x4 after removing the front and rear axles so that it was only a 4-wheel drive instead of an 8-wheel drive. When it was an 8-wheel drive, it did have 4-wheel steering, so that was pretty cool for me too. But this, I think, is probably my crowning achievement because it's actually got suspension that's not just pendular. It's a lot more impressive for me. But anyway, like I said, check out all those other awesome vehicles if you want any concept ideas. I reference a lot of people. For example, I believe LegoMan104 on YouTube. These are YouTube names. SEARME, also known as Serial. His website is serial.pl. And ZBLJ 1987, I believe it is. I could be wrong about that, but just Google, or not Google, search YouTube for ZBLJ. You'll probably find him. He gave a lot of tips for various crawlers and whatnot, which I found quite cool, so that was helpful for me. And those are really my main influences on these things. So, oh, and Piotrek also gave me a few interesting ideas as well. Piotrek, I believe. You should find some pretty incredible things built by him. They're often large things. So, you know, sorry to bore you to death with all my talking, but I find LEGO to be very impressive. So anyway, this is Blood Junkie, signing off. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe. Thanks. I'll talk to you guys.